Huh. Cool nanite meshes. Very cool. What the? What the? But, but why? Hello everybody and welcome to Organian's Puzzle Box. In this new tutorial, we're going to be talking about how to set up nanite meshes to be animated. Now, there's a lot of people out there who don't really understand what Epic meant when they said nanite meshes cannot be animated with a skeletal mesh. I mean, obviously, they've proven that it's possible in Valley of the Ancients by using a blueprint setup in which they've attached nanite meshes onto a skeleton. So in a way, they've sort of they tricked the whole system to just work with nanite meshes. Now, this is not working on organic structures or humans or animals or anything like that, or creatures. It only works on mechanical things, generally things that would move using wheels, using I don't know, some type of articulations that are not organic, so to speak. So I'm going to show you how to set up quite easily. It's quite simple. It's actually it's incredible how simple this is once you put it into practice. But pretty much it offers you an infinite amount of possibilities of being able to model starships and then have a skeleton for them and be able to animate them with very intricate animations by using bones to be able to move these meshes around. It's quite interesting. Now, in my previous videos, I have done other instances where I would have a spaceship, animated in some way, but it was generally, there were nanite meshes, but they were generally animated on their own axis. So, for example, a torus rotating, or a mesh gravitating around another mesh. All of that was sort of a trickery that I've employed on the XYZ axis to just do some basic animations. But what I'm trying to show you here is how to properly animate, just like in the Valley of the Ancients, animate a character. In this particular case, I've selected a model from Horizon Zero Dawn, in which there's like a mechanical boar, a rig that I've got, and I'm just moving this stuff around. So, it's just a simple animation playing in the background. I think it's very neat. I think it's really interesting, and you guys will definitely learn something about this, and also how important naming conventions can be when you really want to have an interesting product on the other side. So it's really important to keep that in mind. So I don't want to waste any more time. We can begin the tutorial. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, on YouTube as a member if you want to. You will then get access to all of my work, and which you'll see in this very quick promo, and then we'll start the tutorial. Let's begin. If you want to support the Organian's Puzzle Box channel, please consider purchasing one of my projects from ArtStation or Gumroad. It's literally the price of a coffee, and it gives you a fully fledged space project to use in Unreal Engine, and there's also some Blender options in there as well. Also, you can become a Patreon member or YouTube member, and then you get access to these projects anyway. So consider that maybe if you want to support me. But let's not waste any more time, and let's begin. Okay, so we are now in the 3D scene. Obviously, you can see my board over here, and well, as you can see, it's really shaking that business. This is a very basic animation. It only took like a few seconds to set up, literally just moving these meshes around, and just thought about putting them into giving them a really nice backdrop. Now, if I get out of this play mode and we click them, let me just bring back my menu. Okay, like that. And if I just bring this down a bit, just so you can see the menu over there. Let me just bring this bottom a bit up so you can sort of see what's going on. If I select the lit option and change this over to triangles, you can now see that all three of these meshes, which is basically the same blueprint, they're all triangulated with the nanite clusters. So are the asteroids in the background, but obviously we're talking about these particular meshes. If I press play, it will switch back into view mode, and you can see that they're all they're all done this way. Now, obviously, there's a blueprint running all of this, and the important bit to get this up and running is how you set it up from your software, original software like Blender, Maya, 3ds Max, and so on. So I've got this model. I've taken it off Sketchfab. This is the model from Sketchfab. It's from a guy called Theo Domon. I think I'm saying that right. He's got quite a few models for Horizon Zero Dawn, so I thought, why not? And as you can see, this has got 1.9 million triangles, so it's very, there's a lot of triangles here. So you can go head on over to Sketchfab and get this model for free and just play around with it yourself. Now in Blender, this is the model that I got. It doesn't have a skeleton. I have this is the low poly that it comes within this model. So setting this up should be fairly straightforward. But then I've created this skeleton, and if I go into pose mode, you'll see that I've got an IK sort of set up in here where the legs. For example, if I select it from here, all I need to do really is animate this portion to get that motion that you saw in Unreal Engine. And this, obviously there's a lot going on in here. All of this is animated. As you can see, the legs, they're not necessarily perfect, but this was just to prove a point. Obviously, I think the point is proven. I will be making a tutorial on how to actually do this type of rigging yourself. But anyway, this is really quite useful because you can do all sorts of things with this sort of setup. You just got to be careful that you don't actually break the legs as you're doing this. So again, we can manipulate this better, but this was just made so we can get a running product very quickly. Now, there's nothing fancy here. We've got the rig, which I called the board_rig. And then we have the board itself, which is obviously the mesh, this mesh. And if we go into edit mode, there's multiple parts in here, and they're all sort of they're not weight painted, they're more like vertex controlled over to each bone. So depending on whatever software you're using, like Maya, 3ds Max or whatever, pretty much the process of rigging and setting up and skeletal mesh and animating and whatnot, it's all very much the same, but with different quirks and small improvements here and there depending on whatever software you're using. But the workflows are generally will result in the kind of the same sort of thing. But this is the low poly mesh that I've got laid down on the skeleton, right? Now there's also a high poly mesh, which is the nanite one. So over in here, I have a hierarchy. Let me just disable the hierarchy for the low poly. I'm just waiting for these meshes to load in. So just take off the skeleton, and this is the high poly. Now, this is very important. The high poly, I've segregated its parts by left arm, right arm, and so on. But the meshes, these are the meshes. So this is in particular, this is the left arm, as I call it. I know it's a leg because it's a board, but whatever, let's just call it an arm. Now, if you can notice here on the naming convention, none of these is associated to any bones or anything like that. They're just simply meshes that have a name, which I've got SM from static mesh _ arm.l _ grp. Now, this naming convention is incredibly important, okay? This is the driving factor of this entire setup, okay? So, if we bring back the skeleton again, and let's just hide the board, we only have the skeleton now on, okay? The skeleton in the high poly mesh. You'll see, you're seeing in here, because I've got the skeleton sort of showing through, always in front of anything else. So if we go into pose mode, and we select this particular bone right here, which is, as you can see, it's inside this shoulder. This bone, it says here the name of it, it's shoulder.l. Okay, that's what the bone is called. If we go back into our static mesh, so just go back into object mode, select the static mesh, you'll notice that this shoulder is called sm _ shoulder.l _ grp. So the name of the bone is the same as the name of the mesh over in that particular position. So that bone, we're sort of, this is how we're using naming convention to link the mesh to the bone. That's what they've done before in the Valley of the Ancients, and that's what we're going to do here as well. Okay, and you'll notice this trend everywhere. Like, for example, this is called sm_hip.l, and if I go into, sorry, if I select the skeleton and go into pose mode and I select this bone, you'll see it's called hip.l. Okay. Now, is it important to have the sm_hip.l.grp? The sm underscore and the underscore grp is perfectly it's based on your preference, whatever you want to put in there. But I would definitely, all the meshes must have that. Like, all of your meshes that are going to be linked to this skeleton must have the information the same. So in my case, it's sm underscore for every one of these meshes, and then underscore grp for all these meshes. Okay, but you can have it anything. You can have it whatever underscore and then underscore whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. If you do that, it's fine. You can do it that way. It's not really a problem. So once you have your skeleton done, once you have your skeleton and your skeleton, your skeleton rigged. So what I mean by that is, this low poly mesh here. As you can see, this animation plays into Blender as well. So I've got an animation, the same one as in an Unreal Engine, but the actual the high poly isn't moving alongside the low poly. That's fine. That's not really a problem. Okay. Because we're doing that linking in Unreal. So what you'd want to do now is you want to select the first. Well, let me just hide the high poly. You want to hide the high poly. So what you want to do, you want to select this low poly mesh and then shift select the skeleton. Now this is done. This is the way that we do it in Blender. If you're using Maya or 3ds Max, use the workflow in that software for this particular sort of thing. So what you want to do is you want to select them that way, go to File, Export as FBX, and then in the FPS export, which for some reason is not opening for me. Let me just try that again. Export FBX. There we go. Put it wherever you want to save it. So you can use whatever you want to save it. I'm just going to not save it this time. I already have it. But the options over here are important. So you want to pick the selected objects for Blender. And then you want to go over into geometry and make sure that the smoothing groups are set to face. And then the armature, you deselect the add leaf bones. And then in the bake animation, put a sampling rate of 0.1 and a simplify of 0. And this will give you a nice, smooth animation. Once you do all of that, just press export and that's it. If you need to play around with the scale or anything like that, that's really based on your preference. But in this particular case, we just need this. It's the most default way of exporting anything out of our Blender to go into Unreal Engine as an animated mesh. So once that's done, then you want to bring in the high poly. So the high poly, it's literally select all the meshes, and then just export, literally doing the same things as you did before. But this time around, you can skip options such as the leaf bones, this simplifying rate and sampling rate and simplify, because you don't actually have any animation on this. This is just a high poly mesh. You want to make sure your geometry normals are set to face and selected objects is ticked. But again, you don't really need to do anything around the armature. And again, export this. This might take a while depending on how big it is. Okay. Now, once that's done, you will go back into, you'll be in Unreal Engine, and I've got everything already imported in my particular case. So what you want to do, let's just say I'm making a new folder here, and I'll just type in skeleton, okay, whatever. In here, I might want to, right click and import. This, by the way, obviously is only applicable in Unreal Engine 5 because this is where we've got nanite meshes. So in this particular case, this is the export that I've done earlier. It's called nanite skeleton. So this is the skeleton. This is the animation and skeleton. So if you double click that, you leave the skeleton to none. You let these two things being ticked off in here. Make sure the normal import method is set to import normals. Make sure you've got things such as the import animation set to on, and then you just press import all, and then Unreal Engine will pretty much bring all of your meshes in here, and that includes the animation. So if we, this is the animation, so if we double click that, If we have a look, this is the animation that we just exported out of Blender, the same one that you saw in Blender being played. Okay, so that's fine. Now, you see if you've got a material set up already as well, which is very important as well. We can go back in here and let's make a new folder, and I'm gonna call this High Poly. And by the way, the naming convention, obviously, you want to work on that. Make sure you use your proper ones. Right now, I'm just playing around, just throwing a few things very quickly in here. So in the high poly version, you can right click, import again, and then you select the high poly mesh, which might, in my case is this nanite mesh. Once you do that, the pop-up will show up. You can build nanite straight away. Definitely don't take skeletal mesh because you don't want that and you don't have any anyway for this. And then you've got an option over, sorry, let me just find it. Yeah, what it says here, combine meshes. Make sure this is unticked, because if you tick this, all of these meshes that you've exported out of Blender, which were, by the way, individual meshes, as you can see here, all of them were. So all these pieces are based on whatever you're trying to animate. Okay, so all the origins on these pieces doesn't matter. It's just their positioning. But whatever you want to animate from here, it has to be an individual piece. Okay, this is why this thing only works for robotic and mechanical type of structures. Okay, so we don't combine the meshes. We want to have import normals here for the normal import method, and then you press import all. Now, I'm not going to do that again. There's no point. Obviously, it takes a bit of time to bring all these meshes in and then convert them into nanite, so there's no point in me doing that again. But you get the idea. Once you press import all, I'll show you what the structure of this will look like. Let me just delete this folder. We don't need it. But basically in Nanite Mesh, this is how, because of this model, it's already set up and it's already in Blender with textures and so on. Unreal will import the materials and it will import the textures. But depending on whatever mesh you're going to be using, you might need to set up the materials for every mesh, the normal procedure for really bringing a character into Unreal Engine. But this is where all the meshes are. And as you can see, they're all by piece, all of these, okay? And they've got all the materials set up. If you would bring all of these into a blueprint right now, they would literally be laid into that blueprint exactly as you have had them in Blender before you exported them. So your mesh will look exactly like this. All of these elements in a blueprint will look exactly like this if you put them into a blueprint. And that's the magic, really. That's where the magic comes in. So yeah, okay, let's just move on to creating the blueprint for that's gonna drive this entire process. I'm going to create over here a new blueprint, and I'm gonna call it I'm gonna select actor. Sorry, the first thing you want to do is select actor, and then BP underscore nanite. Let's just call it that. Okay, we double click it. Let me just put this content browser a bit to the side, and we will bring our new blueprint. Let me just make it a bit bigger in here. We've obviously got nothing within this blueprint. So what we can do, we can press the add button and type in skeletal mesh, okay? And we can call that maybe something like rig. It's really your choice. Now you see we've got in here a skeletal mesh that you can load. So we can search. Well, we've got nanite skeleton. That's basically it. That's my skeleton for this particular thing. So we can, we can search for it. And now you can see it's been added into the scene. I didn't need to necessarily call it nanite skeleton. Well, one second. I think that the performance is dropping a bit. So I'm just going to switch this over to unlit mode. Okay, that's going to give me, because I've just got too many open windows now from Unreal Engine with different things. Okay, so we obviously brought the rig over. And it's not animated whatsoever right now because we're not really playing any animation. But over here, you've got an option where it says animation mode. So you can click that and then use animation asset. And in here, we've got the only animation within this project, which is the nanite skeleton animation, which is the one that you saw in Blender. So I've got that going in there. Obviously, you can see it's moving, it's looping, and it's playing. We can change that a bit with how it plays in just a second, but let's first set up the high poly mesh on top of this as well. So in our content browser over here we've got the nanite meshes, okay? So we can bring these in. But before we do that, we first need to create what I would like to call a bit of a hierarchy structure. So let's just compile this blueprint, then press the add button. and type in static mesh and then select it. I will call that body underscore parts, okay? And then in the in that content browser, if I can only find it, okay, there we go. So in the content browser, I can shift left click all of these, so I can take all of these meshes from here and then drag them over into body parts. As you can see, it highlights when you do that. So now that I've done that, you can actually see all the body parts that we've just added, okay? And you can see that they're all in here overlapping with the other mesh, but it's just not animating. And this is where we need to use the construction script to put this all together, okay? Now we're going to click the construction script. By the way, this is some really neat stuff. You can really learn some very interesting things by doing this. The first thing we want to do is we want to bring a reverse for each loop node, okay? This is going to give us an array, and it can loop the body, and we can get an array element that we can connect to our attach component to component node, which is basically, when I say component to component, it means it attaches a mesh component to a bone component. Okay, so we can then type in here get children components, okay, and that's for the that's not for the rig. I need get children components for the body parts, okay? So what we're basically saying here is, tell me in here, what are the children of the body parts? So for the body parts, you can see all the children. These are all these meshes are the children. And this gives us an array output. So we can connect that into the array node over here, which is really neat. And then we can bring in attach component to component, and that's for the body parts. Okay, so we bring that over in here, and we can connect this loop body to that. Okay, which is what we wanted to do. Now the array element, this can connect to the parent. Sorry, the array element can connect to the target. So you don't want the body part to connect in there individually. We want the entire array element that's within body parts. If we would have just connected this one, then it would be equal to nothing, because body parts doesn't actually have a mesh, but it does have an array of meshes. So we're going to delete that node. And what we want to do, we need to add some stuff in between. This is where the naming convention will help us. So first we bring in a get object, let's type that, yeah, get object name. And then we can connect the array element. So we're taking the object name of every array element within within the body parts, okay? And then we want to replace. So we need to get this string node and just connect it. Then we want to duplicate this over here, okay? And then connect this to this one. Now what we're doing here is we're basically saying we are taking the Nanite mesh. So I'm just going to click that, F2, so I can go into rename mode, or you can just right click and just say rename. And then I'm going to select all of this Nanite underscore mesh underscore SM underscore. So I'm just gonna control C that and then paste it into from in here, okay? And then over here, I'm going to put underscore GRP, which is the end of this. So the foot underscore R, by the way, don't be tricked by the underscore. When we exported these meshes out of Blender, they were .R, but now they're underscore. Don't be fooled by that, because it's this, in this particular case, it's the same thing, okay? So we've got foot.r here, okay? Now, when we select the return value to the socket name, you will notice that this library has been added where it converts a string to a name value. Now, in terms of the location, rotation, and scale, we want to change these to keep world, and then deselect world simulated bodies as well. Okay, now we don't have a parent, so the parent needs to be the rig. So we can connect that over in there, and then let's just hit. By the way, keep these to ignore case. Okay, so it's not case sensitive, meaning that if you have uppercase or lowercase, it will work. Okay, it doesn't matter. Now we're just going to press compile, and let's go back in the viewport. And wouldn't you know it, it works, apart from one small problem. As you can see, this particular mesh isn't working. And I've left that on purpose, really, because I wanted to show you guys why this is happening. Now, if we go back in Blender and we have a look at this hip over here, let's just hide the high body and bring in the skeleton. Click the skeleton, go into pose mode and select this bone, which is where that hip is. This is called hip.l, okay? Now, in Unreal Engine, this mesh is called leg underscore hip underscore L. That's why it's not working. So you can rename this right here in the blueprint and delete the underscore leg. That's it. It's now done. It's working. You see that? Just very, very simple, because we're now using the proper naming convention. But we've got another problem. Obviously, we've got our board, our rig showing up. So this is where you can double click the M skeleton. This is the material, okay? And in the material, oh, sorry, I just need to bring it here. Change the material type from a opaque to a masked. You got opacity mask over here. Press 1 on the keyboard, left click. It's got the value of 0. Put that into the opacity mask and press apply. And just like magic, the mesh is gone, because the mesh is now invisible. Okay, we're not using translucent material, which is more costly. We're just using a simple masked object. Okay, now in the Valley of the Ancients demo, they've used a cube and the skeleton. We're using an entire mesh and the skeleton. Big difference. Obviously, the cube is hidden somewhere within the Ancient. I've just found a different way of just hiding my original mesh. And okay, there are some problems here. Okay, you can see that, but that problem isn't there because of this setup that we've done. That problem is there because the positioning or the mesh deformation that I've done isn't great, because again, I've sort of rushed this, so to speak, to make something viable. And as you can see, potentially this joint shouldn't even be able to turn that way anyway from a mechanical point of view. So obviously you are going to have to put some work into your meshes to make them work properly, okay? But for demonstration purposes, this is obviously what we've done now, and it works just great. I'm not sure if you can actually move these. Oh yeah, it allows you to move it, but it breaks the effect a bit. Okay, so that I would say that's pretty much done. Now, one thing about this animation, if you want to have different animations playing, on your mesh, what you could do is go to the event graph, and then you've got an event tick in here that you can use that event begin play, but I'm going to show you for tick. What you want to do is search for set play rate. Okay, connect that into the event tick, and we need a target. Actually, I didn't look for the right set animation play rate. So you've got set play rate for the rig. Okay, so that's what you need. This is the one. Okay, and then connect this over like that, and then we have a rate value in here. So what you can do, maybe do a float from random float in range. So that's gives you two values. So this is a value between a 0 and 0 at the minute. We can connect this over in here, and then over here maybe add, let me just have a look, 2 variables, and I'm going to call that one animation speed 0, 1, change it to a float, right click and duplicate. Okay, and we can obviously call that 0, 2, and then drag it into here, connect them both, press compile, and then in the animation speed we can give it a default value of 0.2 and 1, and then press compile. So then what happens is, let me just take this away, and I am going to have a look at the BP Nanite is the new one that we've made. Gonna drop it into the scene. It's quite large, so let me just bring my menu back up. Okay, like that. So I'm going to make it a bit smaller. Give me 1 second. Maybe like a 0.3. And this is the new blueprint that we've created. Obviously, this entire ship deck is a bit in an angle, so it's not looking very good. from that point. Okay, but if we press play right now, you can see this is also moving. Okay, so this is now moving just like the rest of them with that animation. One thing in here, if you go back into your blueprint and with the animation speed, you've got these eye drops here, sorry, these eyes here. If you press that and then compile again, you will be able to see those in here. So you can now set up new values. Okay, and if for every blueprint that you have. So now I've set up a 1 to 5, so it will just simply go haywire with the amount of the animation speed. So I could put that to 50. It's just selecting a sort of a random float. As you can see, it's going mental. Okay, so yeah, but let me just stop it because it's just going crazy. Event ticks are generally quite costly, so you might want to use a different approach to set up these animation speeds. But I just wanted to prove a very quick point on that. So that's pretty much the end of the tutorial. I hope you guys found it useful. I'm sure some of you will learn something from this. If you did learn something, please leave a like, a comment, please subscribe to the channel. Please feel free to support me. If you, again, I want to reiterate, if you go on Patreon or the YouTube membership, you get access to all of my spaceship projects for free. You can run off for free, obviously, just for a membership fee, which is quite low. For the price of a coffee, you can get all those projects. Or if you desire, you can go on ArtStation or you can go on Gumroad and you can get the projects from there as well. Again, I do some nice deals on full packs of these projects. I would really, really like to thank my Patreon supporters. They obviously make me drive forward with this. I really enjoy the support. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. I might do something on rigging and animation. I'm not really sure yet. For now, I would really like to experiment with this new workflow for Nanite meshes because I think Unreal Engine is becoming a massive ecosystem in which you can pretty much build anything you want within the engine. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.